my husband, I insisted, my voice trembling with a mix of frustration and disbelief. But my mother-in-law and husband were relentless, their accusations flying as if they were undeniable truths. No, it's not like that at all, I quickly denied, trying to make them understand. But my mother-in-law wasn't having any of it. My son is sterile, she declared, her voice cold and unwavering. So there's no way you could be pregnant. If we got a medical certificate, it would prove your affair, though we don't even need one. It's perfectly obvious. Before I could respond, my mother's hand suddenly struck my face with a stinging slap, silencing me. I turned to my parents, hoping for support, but they just stared back at me, their expressions distant and disapproving. My name is Anna. I'm a 34-year-old office worker, and last year, after several years of dating, I married William. We both have careers, so we share the household chores, maintaining a balanced and stress-free life. William is amazing. He can cook, clean, and do laundry, and I'm truly grateful for that. Our newlywed life has been blissful, and I was certain it would continue this way. From the moment we got married, I've wanted to have children. In my 20s, I was all about my career, but seeing my friends happily raising their kids made me long for one of my own. But now, as I approach my mid-30s, conceiving has proven difficult. Though our marriage has been full of happiness, there have been moments of deep discouragement. Still, I held on to hope that we'd one day be blessed with a baby. Then, one morning, I woke up feeling nauseous. Could it be? I grabbed a test kit, my heart racing, and when the results showed positive, I was in shock. Could I really be pregnant? Shaken but hopeful, I called in late to work and rushed to the hospital. Yes, you're definitely pregnant, the doctor confirmed with a warm smile. I can hear the baby's heartbeat. Are you sure? I asked, barely able to believe it. Absolutely. You're in your 3rd month. Congratulations. You should get your maternity handbook too. I couldn't hold back my tears of joy. I was over the moon and couldn't wait to share the news with William. On my way home, I stopped by the supermarket, picking up food with a heart full of excitement. I imagined William's reaction, hoping he'd be just as overjoyed as I was. Maybe he'd even cry, and we'd embrace in happiness. Even after I got home, I couldn't stop smiling. I cooked dinner in the best mood, anticipating his arrival. Finally, when William walked through the door that night, he noticed the feast I prepared. Wow, dinner looks amazing today, he said, loosening his tie. I couldn't stop smiling as I looked at him, eager to share the news. Guess what? I'm pregnant, I announced, expecting an outburst of joy. Instead, his face froze in surprise. What? Pregnant? I nodded, waiting for the happiness to sink in, but his reaction took an unexpected turn. Whose baby is it? He asked, his voice sharp and cold. What? I stammered, taken aback. I asked you whose child it is, he repeated, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. What's wrong with you? Of course, it's yours, I said, my voice trembling with confusion. He sighed heavily, shaking his head. I'm sterile. What? I whispered, my heart sinking. So, it's not mine, he continued, a note of finality in his tone. I had no idea you were having an affair. I'm disappointed. Wait a minute, I'm not having an affair. This baby is yours, I insisted, desperation creeping into my voice. But he wouldn't listen. Just give me some time. I'm going back to my parents' house, he said, turning away. He left without even touching the meal I had prepared, and the door closed behind him with a sense of finality. A few days later, my husband called my parents, saying he wanted to talk with them. I begged him to discuss it with me alone first, but he ignored my pleas. So we agreed to meet at my parents' house the coming Saturday. The anxiety gnawed at me, and I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with dread over what was to come. I struggled to explain the situation to my parents, and when my in-laws arrived, my mother couldn't hold back any longer. What's going on? She asked, her voice laced with concern. My mother-in-law responded with icy detachment. What? You mean your daughter hasn't told you anything? I heard she's pregnant, but it's not my son's. My parents froze, shock etched on their faces. My father, still in disbelief, muttered, I never imagined Anna would cheat on him. I guess I was the only one who thought they had a strong marriage. Wait a minute, I interjected, my voice shaking. I told you before, I didn't have an affair. But my mother-in-law and husband had already made up their minds, assuming I was at fault without question. No, my mother-in-law continued, her tone accusatory. My son is sterile, so there's no way she could be pregnant. A medical certificate would prove the affair. But we don't even need that. It's obvious. As I tried to defend myself, my mother suddenly slapped me, the sting of her hand leaving me speechless. I turned to my parents, hoping for some semblance of support, but they both stared at me with cold, unfeeling eyes. My husband and mother-in-law exchanged smug looks, their expressions filled with disdain. "Well, you deserve that slap," my mother-in-law sneered. "You committed adultery and never even had the decency to apologize." To my horror, my mother bowed her head and quietly said, "I'm sorry," as if accepting their version of the story without question. "I apologize," I said, my voice trembling. "Come on, you two. Apologize quickly," my mother urged, her tone sharp. My father followed suit, bowing his head to my mother-in-law and husband. "I'm sorry for all the trouble my daughter has caused," he said, grabbing my head and forcing me to bow in submission. I brushed my father's hand away, desperate to make them listen. "Please just hear me out for a minute," I pleaded, but they refused, their anger only growing. "You've brought shame upon this family," my father shouted in front of my mother-in-law and husband. "You're no daughter of mine." My mother-in-law and husband exchanged smug looks, their laughter ringing in my ears. "Oh my, they disowned you," my mother-in-law sneered. "Well, you got what you deserved." Just then, the living room door creaked open, and my sister walked in, her face a mask of concern. "Dad, Mom, please calm down," she urged, her voice steady. Finally, a glimmer of hope, but my father turned his anger on her. "How can you stay so calm after hearing all this? And this is none of your business." "We're family, it's very much my business," my sister replied firmly. "And before you arrived, I spoke with Anna. Is it true, William? Are you sterile?" My mother-in-law and husband exchanged uneasy glances, clearly caught off guard. "Could it be that your sister suspects us, William?" my mother-in-law asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "No, of course not," William replied, "but maybe it's time we address this with some facts." My sister remained calm, ready to uncover the truth. "When did you have the examination?" my sister asked, her voice laced with suspicion. My husband and mother-in-law exchanged uneasy glances. "He hasn't had any tests," my mother-in-law admitted. "What?" I froze, disbelief washing over me. My sister looked equally stunned. "Then how can you be so sure he's sterile?" My mother-in-law bristled. "Are you trying to intimidate us?" "He hasn't been tested, but it's true," she insisted. "How can you be so certain?" my sister pressed, her tone unwavering. With an exasperated sigh, my mother-in-law began to explain. "My son was married once before when he was young. They were together for 7 years, and she never got pregnant. But right after their divorce, his ex-wife conceived. Clearly, my son was the reason they couldn't have children." "Now do you believe me?" she demanded, her voice dripping with certainty. "This proves that he's sterile, and that you must be cheating on him." She looked at me with utter contempt. "The idea that you'd cheat on my son and still want to stay married to him is repulsive. You're a disgusting woman, you know that." My husband nodded in agreement, his expression mirroring his mother's disdain. "Yes, you are. You've even dared to bear a child that I couldn't have. You've insulted me beyond words." I was utterly mortified. That wasn't proof that my husband was sterile, but I didn't have the knowledge to argue back. Desperate, I glanced at my sister, silently pleading for her help. She noticed my distress, gave me a reassuring nod, and began speaking again. "I understand why you might think there's an issue given your past experience," she said calmly. "But you can't definitively say your son is sterile based on that alone. There are couples who have children after 10 years of marriage without any fertility treatments." My mother-in-law scoffed, cutting her off. "Don't try to lecture me with something you found on the internet. You're not a doctor, so what you say doesn't mean a thing." I wondered if my mother-in-law had paid attention at all when she met my family. "My sister is a doctor and an obstetrician," my sister replied, her voice firm. Both my mother-in-law and husband were taken aback. "What?" they exclaimed in unison. I was stunned, too. It was clear they hadn't really listened when my sister had introduced herself before the wedding. Still incredulous, my sister continued, "I explained this to you when we met before their marriage. You're speculating about this whole situation. It seems you're blaming my sister based on nothing but assumptions." She paused, then added, "If you really want to accuse her, then let's do a proper examination." Since we're family, I'll do it for a reasonable price. When my sister made her suggestion, both my husband and mother-in-law flinched, but it seemed there was no turning back now. If you insist, let's get it checked out. My husband finally agreed, and my mother-in-law reluctantly nodded in agreement. The tests were conducted, and I decided to stay at my sister's house until the results came in. I couldn't bear to see my husband or return to my parents' home. My sister did her best to cheer me up during those days, helping to keep my mind from spiraling into worry. A few weeks later, the results were ready. We gathered at my parents' house to review them together. The tests confirmed that there was nothing wrong with my husband. My mother-in-law's face turned pale, and my husband looked genuinely surprised. "Anna, I'm sorry," he said, "but I'm glad to know that there's nothing wrong with me and that I can prove the child is mine." He said it so matter-of-factly that I was left speechless. Was this the same person who had accused me so easily, who had sided with his mother based on nothing but assumptions? My mother-in-law, instead of apologizing, laughed awkwardly and said, if this was how it was going to turn out, we should have done the test earlier. She offered no apology, and it was clear she had no intention of doing so. "I guess that settles it," my husband said, sounding oddly proud of himself. I realized I couldn't stay with a man like this any longer. My husband, assuming everything was settled, said, "Let's go home together," but I couldn't bring myself to leave with him. Sensing my hesitation, my sister intervened. "I don't think she's ready to go home yet. She'll stay with me for a while," she said. He reluctantly agreed, and finally my husband and mother-in-law left my parents' house. "What a pair," my mother muttered after they left. "They nearly fooled us too. I'm sorry for slapping you the other day, but this is all their fault." While my parents now blamed my husband and mother-in-law, I couldn't help but feel they were partially at fault too. My sister took me back to her apartment, and the moment we arrived, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I broke down in tears. My sister didn't say a word, she just held me, comforting me in silence. I was terrified by how everyone had doubted me, looking at me with cold suspicion. In the midst of all that, my sister was the only one who stood by my side. I was so grateful that I had confided in her the day before the meeting at our parents' house. She went out of her way to come and support me, and I couldn't thank her enough. I stayed with my sister for a few days to recover, both physically and mentally. During that time, I made a decision. Together with my sister, I went to the house where my husband was staying. When he opened the door and saw me, he said, "Welcome home. I've been waiting for you." But his smile faded when he noticed my sister and another person standing beside me. Who's this?" he asked, confused. "This is my lawyer," I replied calmly. "Lawyer?" My husband's face went pale. "Why did you bring a lawyer?" "I can't live with you anymore. I'm here to ask for a divorce." He looked shocked, panic washing over his face. "Wait, what? This is so sudden. You can't just ask for a divorce out of nowhere." "It's not sudden," I said firmly. "After everything that's happened, this is the only option." The lawyer stepped in, explaining the fact that you and your mother accused Anna without any basis as grounds for divorce, and the fact that you concealed your supposed infertility from her, knowing she wanted children, is a significant issue. I don't think my husband expected this outcome at all. He nodded, but he seemed to be in shock. With him standing aside, I packed up my belongings and returned to my sister's house. After that, all communication with my husband was handled through my lawyer. I demanded compensation for the emotional pain and suffering he had caused me, as well as a fair division of property and child support. Thanks to my skilled lawyer, I was able to secure all of these. On top of that, my mother-in-law and husband had spread rumors in our neighborhood and at his workplace, claiming I was having an affair. I sued them for defamation of character. Not only did I receive additional compensation, but they were also forced to retract their statements and apologize to everyone they had misled. As a result, both my husband and mother-in-law lost all credibility and have since become socially isolated. I decided to rent an apartment just down the street from my sister's house. My parents offered for me to move back home so they could help raise their grandchild, but I politely declined. I didn't want them, who failed to protect me, to take care of my child. In fact, my sister had also experienced similar disappointment with our parents, who were more concerned about their social image than their children's well-being. She too has chosen to keep her distance from them. While I am grateful to my parents for supporting my education, I can't overlook how they failed me in this situation. I'll maintain a minimal relationship with them out of respect, but I'm deeply disappointed. For now, it's enough for me to have a sister who truly cares about me and stands by my side. I will always do my best to support her as well. My priority now is to be strong for the sake of my unborn child. The betrayal from my husband and mother-in-law was terrible, but the way my own parents turned against me without even listening was just as painful. I'm so grateful to have a wonderful sister who stood by me through it all. Being a single mother won't be easy, but with her support, I know I'll be fine. I'll cherish the bond we share and focus on living a happy life, one day at a time.
Once my son is gone, you'll be going back to your parents' place, right? We'll live in this house then. My dear husband had suddenly passed away. Right after the funeral, while I was engulfed in sorrow, my husband's parents came to see me. Even though it's not much, this house is filled with memories of living with my husband. Why do I have to leave? But mother-in-law, without a moment's pause to let me wipe my eyes, bluntly said that. My name is Susan. I'm an administrative worker at a real estate agency. My meeting with my dear husband, David, was facilitated by the real estate agency where I work. David was the brother of my male colleague, Michael, and they were very close. Since their workplaces were near, David often visited. As I worked in the same administrative role, I grew close to Michael, who would later become my brother-in-law. This connection led to Michael introducing me to David. Gradually, David and Michael started inviting me for lunch, and we began spending more time together. I thought of David as a cheerful, nice guy with whom I shared a lot in common, but I hadn't seen him in a romantic light. I assumed he felt the same, until one day when everything changed. We were supposed to meet at a restaurant Michael had reserved, but he had a sudden emergency and couldn't make it. It seemed wasteful to cancel the reservation, so for the first time, it was just the two of us. I later found out that this was arranged by the brothers, with Michael conspiring to give David and me some alone time. The food was delicious, and our conversation flowed. We quickly became close, discussing our backgrounds and values. The more I learned about David's inner self, the more I was drawn to his warm smile. This day marked a turning point in our relationship. It didn't take long for us to get married. I have Michael to thank for making this happen. In that sense, and in future events, I can't thank Michael enough. Then came the day of the family meeting with my in-laws. Feeling anxious, I was met by my in-laws with great warmth and kindness. Their caring and considerate conversation eased my nerves. I'm so glad you could come. We've been looking forward to meeting you, Susan. I've cooked a lot, hoping today would be a special day. Mother-in-law Emily said, taking great care of me. My in-laws, like their eldest son David, were independent and very approachable. I was relieved and grateful for the enjoyable time at my in-laws. Our interactions continued, and they always supported our happiness, never imposing their views on marriage or children. Eventually, the topic of living together at the in-laws came up, but we had plans to build our own home. In fact, my grandfather left a house for me. My in-laws listened intently and nodded. My grandfather cherished me as his only granddaughter, and he left me a beautifully renovated house and land. He seemed to wait for the inheritance process to complete before passing away. The property was nearby and had increased in value due to redevelopment, but as someone experienced in real estate, I knew it was more beneficial to sell it to fund our dream home. Grateful for my grandfather's love, we were already considering selling it, as he had said the house was mine to live in or sell. After marriage, we moved there. However, it was far from work, and despite its good location, it wasn't practical to continue living there. As we planned to sell it, a significant change came into our lives. David, working in sales, was ordered to transfer. His company had branches nationwide, and he was the only suitable candidate. It was an official order, and he couldn't refuse. I'll come home every long weekend, and my parents are planning to visit. Could you take them out? It's okay if you don't overexert yourself. Father-in-law Brian and Emily are very nice. I don't mind going out with them, but it looks like we'll have to postpone selling the house. With my job to consider, David's assignment to work alone was decided. It was sudden, but I had to endure the loneliness and worry waiting for the day we could live together again. As David said, on the days off, My in-laws, especially Emily, would frequently come to visit. Emily, who had endured loneliness many times while raising young children when Brian was away on business trips, shared her experiences with me. "You can still create family memories even without children. How about going out with me? Shopping might cheer you up. Let's go, Susan." Thanks to Emily, I didn't feel lonely. My weekends were even busier. However, I started to notice something troubling. Almost every day off, Emily would insist on going out. It was nice, but after a month, Emily's invitations became more forceful, regardless of my fatigue or household chores. I was hoping to rest this week. When I said that, Emily frowned as if I was being selfish. "But it's fun to go out together, isn't it? Or do you dislike going out with me?" No, it's not that. But you've been taking me out every week. Don't you need a break, Emily?" Emily looked sad. Even as I tried to clear up the misunderstanding, Emily wouldn't listen. I agreed reluctantly, and Emily smiled, acting as if she never insisted. My suspicions about Emily's behavior grew. The places she insisted on going were increasingly expensive. Shopping at brand stores and eating at upscale restaurants, and the bills fell on me. Emily often left the store first, leaving me no choice but to pay. There was never a thank you or a promise to pay me back later. Sure, I have a house and a good salary, so savings weren't an issue. But David and I had always been frugal, so Emily's extravagance felt odd. Even when both in-laws were there, it was the same. In fact, with Brian, my financial burden only increased. I knew I had to address it, but it was hard to discuss with David. David had said, "I'll definitely come home on the long weekends." But his new office was busy, and he rarely managed to return. "Mom says you've been going out every week. Are you managing okay? Doesn't seem like there's anything to worry about." David's video call showed his tired eyes and thinner cheeks. His work fatigue was evident. Feeling guilty about bringing up the issue with Emily, I ended up being overly optimistic. "Emily's been really good to me. Take care of yourself, David. I'm fine, don't worry." While I downplayed it to David, I couldn't refuse to pay for outings with my in-laws. Their behavior escalated until one day when I said, "I can't go out today." Emily said something unexpected. "Then, can you lend me some money?" "Hey, for you?" "Just a little, really. I've already made a reservation at a restaurant. I'll take another friend instead, so could you cover what I'm short?" I wanted to refuse, but that would have made things worse. Resigned, I opened my wallet. But Emily never acted this way in front of David. "Have you thought about asking David?" When I hinted this to Emily, "That's shameful to tell David." Her response shocked me. It was clear she felt it was okay to ask me, not David. I gave up on Emily as her demands for money became routine. At least giving her some pocket money, she stopped dragging me out. I knew it was a big problem, but my attempts to communicate with Emily were exhausting. Her behavior became more bizarre. She'd show up unannounced, inspecting the inside and outside of the house, making me feel like my privacy was invaded. "Is this from your grandfather, Susan? This furniture? It's wonderful you can afford such luxury." Some furniture were antiques my grandfather liked. Emily seemed to enjoy them, admiring them as if they were her own. This is mine and David's home. I finally started to consider confiding about Emily's actions. David might be surprised, but how I wish we could find a way to deal with Emily together. Emily's actions are far from pleasant. Even as in-laws, it's an invasion of privacy. However, around the same time, the duration of David's assignment was determined. Just a little longer to bear it, and when David returns, the in-laws asking for money would likely end. A glimmer of hope sprouted in my heart. David was working hard every day, so I just needed to be patient a little longer. But as I eagerly awaited David's return, things took an unexpected turn. "What? David collapsed? And he's in the hospital?" I was stunned. The call came from a colleague at his new location, and I hurried to the hospital. Perhaps due to overwork, David suddenly suffered a heart attack. Though rushed to the hospital by ambulance, it was too late. My kind, healthy David passed away from an unforeseen attack. I couldn't grasp the reality as I faced his funeral. I don't remember much, overwhelmed by grief. Michael rushed over, taking care of most things. I'm sorry, Michael. Even though you lost David too, you're helping so much. It's David's funeral. Of course I should help. How about the land? Is the house ready? We talked while cleaning up after the funeral. I nodded and said, everything's perfect. Then a few days after David's funeral, my in-laws came to the house. But it was clear they weren't there to console me. It's a shame about David, but we're here for you, don't worry. Emily's face had a strangely unpleasant smile. To my astonishment, she had arranged a truck, packed to the brim with furniture and belongings from her house. I was too shocked and confused to speak. This looked like a move. Emily and her husband were planning to move in without discussing it with me? Why were they doing this? But the answer was clear. Are you after my land? I voiced my concern amidst the confusion. Emily showed a cold smile. The land value has soared. We've been eyeing this house for a long time. In fact, Susan, it's thanks to this inheritance you married David. We allowed the marriage because you inherited it. I was overwhelmed with despair, lost for words. Emily, you mean you're moving in with me? Excuse me? What nonsense are you talking about? I asked in confusion, and Emily got angry. David's death was unexpected, but even if it hadn't happened, Emily intended to take this house. My in-laws were trying to replace me as the landowner. They assumed I'd leave the house because David was gone. Now that David is gone, you'll go back to your parents, right? It'd be sad to leave this house empty, so we'll live here. That's why I'm telling you not to worry. Emily's smile twisted in distortion. While feeling fear, I pointed out Emily's mistake. But the house is already sold. I restrained my laughter at Emily's misunderstanding, but couldn't hide my unpleasant smile. Emily, in turn, huh? Froze. Just then, a different moving company's truck arrived. Sorry, we're here to deliver to this house. A burly mover came down, speaking to us due to the confusion of another truck being present. Emily's movers also came down. Realizing something was amiss due to the arrival of the other truck, they looked bewildered. Both in-laws were flustered and incoherent. Arguing with everyone wouldn't resolve anything. Seeing my in-laws in panic, I began to regain my composure. Then I promptly gave instructions to move the truck. This house has already been sold, and the contract finalized. A new family is moving in, so you can't bring their belongings into someone else's house, right? As the movers were astonished, a luxurious car pulled up. Out came a wealthy-looking couple and their children. In fact, the land was no longer mine. They were the new owners. My in-laws were increasingly confused, unable to comprehend what was happening. Please move the truck quickly. The new occupants can't start their work. Somehow, I managed to get Emily's truck moved, and the movers immediately began their work, efficiently transporting brand new furniture according to the planned procedure. Emily and her husband, unable to accept this, started to persistently pester me at the entrance. The occupants, realizing the situation, took their family back to the car and then came over to confront us. Who are you? We bought this house. Please let the truck go soon. I hadn't expected my in-laws to visit, so I apologized repeatedly to reassure the new owners. But Emily and her husband didn't leave. They pushed past us and barged into the house. Of course, the house had completely changed from what they knew. None of the furniture my husband and I used was left. Emily was shocked at the sight and started to make a scene. What's this? The house is empty. The antique furniture, the lighting, I love those. What's going on? Emily was infuriated, unable to understand what was happening. The occupant finally snapped. I'll call the police. Frustrated, Brian quickly grabbed Emily and retreated. Once away from the scene, the heated Emily quieted down somewhat. First, I apologized to the occupants. There could still be future problems, they warned. So I provided them with my in-laws' names and addresses to somehow resolve the situation. Feeling a deep sense of exhaustion, I still had things to explain to my in-laws. I went back to them and calmly explained that the move had been completed just days before David's death. The plan was always to sell the house along with the land. It was the original plan, though it had been paused due to David's solo assignment. The smooth progression of the plan was due to a certain background. It was Michael who encouraged our decision. Confused by my in-laws' change, especially their demand for money, I didn't want to worry David and couldn't consult him, leading to days of despondency. Michael noticed and came to my rescue. Michael, who didn't get along with his parents, "If you're in trouble, I'll help," had offered. Trusting Michael, who promised to keep it a secret for the sake of our marital harmony, I decided to confide everything. Upon hearing it, Michael was furious with his parents. Michael, David's brother and my colleague, understood their scheme well. For him, David was his only family, and he saw me, David's wife, as family too. "My parents will either try to live in that house eventually, or conveniently kick both of you out to make it their own." According to Michael, both parents were pretentious and unscrupulous, especially Emily, who was selfish and malicious under her refined exterior. Hearing these intense stories about his own family from Michael, David never knew this side of his parents because they hid it from him, the heir. Anyway, to avoid losing it to them, Michael suggested we sell the land early. I agreed with Michael's suggestion and decided to proceed with the sale. Even though it was a valuable inheritance from my grandfather, I didn't want it to become an obstacle for us. Rather, because it was important, I didn't want to leave any troubles. Of course, it wasn't a decision made on my own. I had discussed it with David while he was alive and had his agreement. At that time, David learned about all his parents' actions. Though I didn't want to tell him, I couldn't complete the sale alone. But David understood why I couldn't consult him and condemned his parents' actions. "I'm sorry I didn't notice. If it's okay with you, Susan, let's finish the sale before my parents make a move. It's a shame about the house inherited from grandfather-in-law." "No, it's okay. If it's going to cause trouble, grandfather would agree to let it go too." I decided to sell the land, not to protect my relationship with my in-laws, but to safeguard the future I had with David. Michael, a real estate expert, exerted his efforts in the sale, finding the ideal buyers. My task was to find a new place to move as soon as possible and act naturally to prevent my in-laws from finding out. The house, while lived in, was almost like new, so we were able to keep the price reasonable. Thus, a buyer was quickly found and the sale was swiftly concluded. They were the family that had just arrived. Originally, I had planned to wait in our new home for David's return. David was pleased about the sale, so it was only regrettable he wasn't here. The movers efficiently transported the furniture. The evicted in-laws watched from a distance as the move continued smoothly. They stood dumbfounded for a while, but that couldn't last forever. The movers they had hired, angry and confused, demanded an explanation. From their perspective, the booking mistake was inconceivable. "I can't believe this is happening. It's a breach of contract." They questioned my in-laws, who in their panic struggled to explain. Eventually, the household goods had to be taken back, but because of the unexpected situation, a significant surcharge was apparently billed. Emily, finally understanding the situation, clung to me, trembling. "This is the wife of David's house, so it's our home too, right? This situation is odd, isn't it?" She tried to persuade me with her strained excuses, but I ignored them and left with only my hand luggage. The land was already the new family's property, not mine anymore, so I had nothing to answer. David's memorial service proceeded without delay. I encountered my in-laws there, but even though they seemed like they wanted to say something about the house, they never did and eventually left surreptitiously. I had no obligation to speak to them anymore, so we barely talked. I lived my days in peace. In a new house, a small home where I was supposed to restart with David, I faced the grief of losing him. With substantial savings from the sale, the plan to build our own home vanished without David. Returning to work, I immersed myself in the few memories I had with David and slowly began to look forward to a positive future. Meanwhile, my in-laws, especially Emily, must have been accumulating unresolved grievances. I didn't want any more involvement with them, so I didn't inform them of my new residence. Unable to interact with me, Emily's frustration only grew. She had always pretended in front of David, and now couldn't turn to Michael, whom she didn't get along with. Not knowing my whereabouts added to her stress. which kept piling up until Emily lost her balance. One night, Emily committed a heinous act by pouring gasoline around the sold house. Fortunately, a passing neighbor, sensing something amiss, apprehended her before anything worse could happen. After being reported to the police and found with the old paper and a lighter, Emily was arrested for attempted arson. The new occupants, furious upon learning she was the woman who had intruded on moving day, angrily insisted on pressing charges, contacting me as well. I apologized profusely, but it was for the terrifying experience they almost had, not for Emily's attempted arson. In the end, Emily couldn't escape legal action due to her obsession with the house. I managed to be forgiven after repeated apologies, promising such an incident would never happen again. Emily, who had grown up in luxury and always had whatever she wanted, became frustrated when she couldn't have the house. That's why, I want that house! This unfulfilled desire turned into distorted jealousy. Unable to let go of the house and land, she resorted to crime and eventually ended up in prison. Brian, who should have been her support, ended their marriage in a dispute following her arrest. So when her sentence was over, Emily had no home to return to. But that was the outcome of her own actions. Michael, lonely after losing David, said, "Susan, having you makes it bearable." Though my relationship with my in-laws was severed, I hadn't lost my entire family. For David, who I believed was watching over me from heaven, I resolved to live peacefully.
Really our child? My dad sighs as he looks at my report card. Growing up in a family of doctors, I always thought that following that path was the natural thing for me to do. So I've been studying hard since I was a child, and my grades have always been at the top of my class. But to my dad, a doctor himself, that's apparently not enough. He says it has to be at the national level, or it doesn't count. Hearing this again and again, I gradually grew to despise the profession of being a doctor. My name is Emily. Both my parents are doctors, and so are my relatives. I have an older sister, and my parents always assumed that my sister and I would naturally go into the medical field. My sister Jessica has always been exceptional and has been the favorite of our parents. Everyone thought Jessica would become a doctor, and she became one without any setbacks. I think that's impressive. But Jessica always got whatever she wanted, and she was praised, even for the smallest things. She was so indulged that I was envious. I was always being compared to Jessica, and I was always told that I wasn't good enough. Even though Jessica is 5 years older than me, the fact that I couldn't do what Jessica could do was treated like a failure on my part, when it should have been expected. Gradually, my parents stopped caring about me. When Jessica was stressed from studying, she would verbally abuse me, and sometimes she even raised her hand in anger at me. But I never told anyone, knowing that my parents wouldn't believe me. I went to a college preparatory school, but I have no intention of going to college. After constant verbal abuse, I left home. I was already working part-time, planning for this, and I had enough money to get by, for now. When I graduated from high school, I found a live-in job at a hotel in a tourist area, and they took me in. I needed my parents' consent because I was still a minor, but they wrote the consent form without a word. They probably just wanted me to leave, the failure that I was, as soon as possible. I hadn't contacted my family for over 6 months since leaving home, and I hadn't heard from them either. But as the end of the year approached, I got a call from Daddy. "Come home for the New Year's celebration. The relatives are gathering, and you'll be the host." Daddy said just that and hung up without waiting for my response. At home, it's a tradition for relatives to gather for a feast every New Year's. Since the relatives are all doctors, it's always been a painful experience for me. And of course, I always end up doing the odd jobs. I'm responsible for everything, from cleaning the day before to preparing food, drinks, baths, and futons for the relatives who stay over. Mom just gives me instructions, and Jessica, of course, ignores me altogether. I've wondered why it has to be me, but I felt guilty about not pursuing a medical career, and it was easier to go along with it. I thought I wouldn't be called because I left home, but Daddy contacted me, so I decided to go home for just one day. My hotel job was, of course, in its busy season. I couldn't take a long break. I planned to go home and leave quickly, using my job as an excuse. When I got home that day, Daddy yelled at me, "You're late! Everyone's coming soon. Why didn't you come back yesterday?" But I'm busy at work this time of year, so it was hard to take even a day off. Stop making excuses. Hurry up and get ready. He wouldn't listen to me at all. Sighing, I entered the house where Mom was waiting. There was no feeling of relief coming back home. I just cleaned, cooked, and prepared drinks, as Mom told me to. As the relatives gathered and the party started, I was out of the loop, as usual, but that was more comfortable for me. Complaints about the hospital or gossip about patients, it was nothing but bad-mouthing others. I even thought that becoming a doctor made everyone talk bad about someone. For me, it was not a fun space at all. But Jessica seemed to enjoy mingling, looking down on other doctors and patients, making fun of them. As I carried drinks, Christopher approached me. "So, Emily, being a doctor was impossible for you, huh?" He said with a smirk, and I felt disgusted. I wanted to say that I hadn't failed to become a doctor, I just didn't want to. I don't want to be someone who can't live without demeaning others like you. I swallowed the words that almost came out, because it would only drain my energy to say them. Night came and I fled from my family home. My parents complained about how the cleaning would be done, who would entertain tomorrow. But I didn't care. I have to work early tomorrow. Without even bringing a change of clothes, I just said that and quickly boarded the bus home. That was the only contact from my family for a year. When it came, I thought, not again. Every year, I took a day off, went home, and immediately returned. It wasn't that I didn't find it bothersome, but it was only one day a year. I lived at home until I graduated from high school, and they even paid for my college preparatory school, despite not going to college. So I figured it wouldn't hurt to show my face at home that much. 7 years have passed since then, and I'm now 25. I still visit home once a year, unchanged. It's that time of year again. I should be hearing from Daddy soon. Just as I started thinking that, the phone rang. I assumed it was Daddy, but when I looked at the screen, an unexpected name was displayed. I pressed the call button. Jessica? I hardly ever get a call from Jessica. I picked up the phone fearfully, thinking something might have happened to my parents, but contrary to my fears, Jessica was in high spirit. "Hey, you know the young CEO at your workplace? He's been on TV a lot lately, hasn't he?" she said with an excited voice. This attitude from Jessica was a first. I was confused and a bit scared. He has opened a few new hotels, so he has had more opportunities to be on TV. As I said that, Jessica happily replied, "Introduce me to him! I fell in love with him when I saw him on TV the other day. Plus, he's a young master, right? I think he'd suit me." I was at a loss for words. To think she'd contact me for something like this. What does she mean by suit me? Gentle Alexander and Jessica, who likes to look down on others, would never match. While I was lost for words, Jessica continued the conversation. "Oh, I see. You, a lowly worker, wouldn't have a chance to be close to the CEO. Maybe you've never even met him. Even if you have, a plain woman like you wouldn't stay in his memory." Even though I didn't respond, Jessica kept talking, satisfying herself. I tried to interrupt, but Jessica's momentum was unstoppable. "That's right. Do you know when the CEO will come to your place? I'll stay over that day. If I can meet him face to face, he's mine. He won't resist a beauty like me. So make a reservation and let me know. Of course, since I'm going out of my way to stay over, you'll have to cover the lodging costs." I was speechless. "But Jessica, aren't you having arranged meetings for marriage?" In our family, it's customary to be married by 30, and many go through arranged meetings. I thought Jessica had done that already. But what does this mean? Arranged meetings? There's no one decent. The other day, it was a 35-year-old guy. Introduce me to someone who matches me. I was disheartened by hearing that. So Jessica looks down on even her arranged meeting partners. That doesn't mean I have to introduce her to Alexander. I told her it was impossible, and hung up the phone. A month later, on New Year's Day, I went back home for just one day. I planned to entertain my relatives as usual, and then leave quickly. But this year, my relatives were unusually intrusive. "You work at a hotel, don't you, Emily? I can't believe you can keep up such a low-end job," Christopher said, followed by Mom saying, "Indeed, we're impressed you can do a job that's not as essential as ours." Even Daddy chimed in, I'm glad you left the house early. Now I don't have to hear from the neighbors about what you're doing. I'm sorry I'm such an embarrassment. I knew they felt that way, but hearing it all at once was indeed sad. As I was disheartened, Jessica said, laughing, "You don't have any redeeming qualities, so you'll be alone forever, right? What will you do?" Her words made my sadness disappear. I wanted to give it right back to her. I had finally released the emotions I'd been holding back against Jessica. "Jessica, you're 30, aren't you? You're 5 years older than me. What are you going to do? If you keep having such high expectations, you'll be left behind." I blurted out those words, and Daddy was furious. "How dare you say that about Jessica? Apologize, now!" My parents were always on Jessica's side. Jessica was their only darling. If that's the case, I wish they would live as a family of 3, forever. I sighed, ignoring Daddy's rage. That seemed to make Daddy even angrier. "What's with that attitude? Who do you think raised you this far?" Mom was nodding beside Daddy. The relatives were the same. It was the consensus of all the relatives. I felt completely fed up with that thought. But before I could open my mouth, Daddy yelled, "You, a failure like you, are ashamed of our family. Get out, now!" The expression on his face was clearly mocking me. I took a deep breath and opened my mouth. "I won't be coming here anymore after this year." I said that, picked up my belongings, and headed for the entrance. "Thank you for everything, up to now." Then I heard the sound of a car outside. When I opened the door with my shoes on, a luxury car was parked there. My parents and Jessica had noticed the car's sound and came out. A man was getting out of the driver's seat. Jessica was the first to recognize the person. "You, President?" It was Alexander, the president of my company, the person Jessica had asked me to introduce before. Alexander bowed and began to walk toward the entrance. Jessica said excitedly, "Emily, could it be that you—" It seemed like she wanted to say, "Are you going to introduce him?" I laughed. "Sorry to keep you waiting, I was just leaving," I said to Alexander, and he also smiled. "Thought it was about time, so I came to pick you up." Our conversation left my parents and Jessica in a state of shock. Behind them, I could see the faces of the relatives who had come out to see what was happening. Daddy was staring at Alexander, dumbfounded. Alexander walked up to Daddy. I apologized for my late greeting. Following that, I leaned close to Alexander and said, "He's my fiancé. We're getting married next month." "Huh?" Was that Jessica's voice, my parents' voice, or both? I said with a laugh. "But I have no intention of inviting you to the wedding. I have no lingering attachment to this house, so I don't think I'll be coming back. It seems this wasn't the place for me to return to, after all." After Alexander proposed to me, he said he wanted to greet my parents, so I explained my situation up until now. Everyone noticed the problem in my family due to my reluctance to go home, and they understood once they heard about the bad reputation of the hospital. Jessica had spoken about it too, so Alexander decided to come and pick me up. Ignoring my stunned family, I continued. "Speaking of which, there's a new hotel opening near Daddy's hospital. I'm involved in the project, and when I was doing the local research, I found out that Daddy's place has been involved in multiple medical malpractice and scandals. Is that right?" Daddy's face changed color at this. "You're not involved in this, are you, Daddy?" The local people were so shocked by the bad reputation. "Jessica works there too. Are you sure it's okay?" According to the locals, the reputation of Daddy and Jessica is the worst. I was shocked to hear from the locals. Like father, like daughter, referring to Daddy and Jessica. At that time, I also heard that Daddy and Jessica were causing scandals, and I felt somewhat responsible for it. That's why I'm excited to make the hotel business a success and please the locals. In contrast, Daddy and Jessica looked pale. Since I had told my fiancé Alexander everything, he simply opened the passenger door without any unnecessary interruption. I met Alexander right after leaving home. Under the previous president's policy, Alexander, the next president, was working in the field, and we became close friends. I heard later that he fell in love with me at first sight. Unlike before, where I was constantly denied, the more I worked hard, the more I was appreciated. I worked hard because I enjoyed it. He seemed to like that attitude too. Alexander took over as president after the previous one fell ill and proposed to me about 6 months ago. His words asking for my support resonated with me. Since accepting the proposal, I've been learning various things, focusing on business studies. I realized that I don't hate studying, but rather enjoy gaining various knowledge. What I hated was studying only to become a doctor. When I find something fun, I tend to look into it, and the more knowledge I gain, the more I want to do. As I was about to get into the car, Daddy yelled, "Hey, Emily, what's going on?" But I smiled and said, "I'm no longer a daughter of this house. Goodbye." Leaving my confused family behind, the car quietly drove off. Later, the new hotel opened successfully, and I was busy working on site from the first day when it was fully booked. Then my parents and Jessica came. Daddy, who spotted me, called out, "We came to see what kind of work you're doing, and to stay over. Prepare the room, quickly." I wanted to ask what nerve he had, but I was too busy managing the site. Seeing this, Alexander rushed over to send my family away, but they stubbornly caused a commotion in the lobby. Since I wasn't getting anywhere, I had the security guard step in. Then a woman named Olivia, who came into the lobby afterward, exclaimed, "Oh, it's you, the teacher." I later heard that she's a nurse at Daddy's hospital, and she doesn't think highly of Daddy and Jessica due to their arrogant attitude. Seeing Daddy being escorted by the security guard, she seemingly found it amusing and shared it as a funny story at work. Olivia, it turns out, is a neighbor and friend to the front desk staff, and one of them told me about it. Naturally, the rumor spread throughout the hospital, causing Daddy and Jessica some embarrassment. As for Mom, she used to work at the same hospital but has since retired. However, her retirement was in name only, as the truth was she was forced to quit due to a scandal. I accidentally heard Olivia slip this information. I had another job to attend to and was at a different hotel when my parents and Jessica came to the hotel again. Frustrated at their audacity, I had no hesitation in calling the police, and they were taken away for obstruction of business. Because of Daddy and Jessica's past behavior, the rumor quickly spread in the hospital. The hospital, already struggling financially, was apparently forced to shut down. Passing by my family's home a little while later, I saw it was vacant. They must have sold it out of financial desperation. I also heard rumors that Jessica's attempts at matchmaking had failed, so maybe various local gossip forced them to leave. I've changed my cell number, so they can't contact me. And of course, I have no intention of contacting them either. With the opening of the new hotel settled, I'm looking forward to my wedding next month. With wonderful Alexander by my side, both my work and personal life are looking brighter than ever.
Woke up to a message from my husband. Contractions have started. The baby is finally coming. The news was about my sister-in-law Mia, who was about to give birth. I don't usually interact much with Mia, but the thought of my soon-to-be niece filled me with excitement. I called my husband, full of anticipation. But contrary to my expectations, he sounded rushed. "Don't come to the hospital." "What?" "I'll go to the hospital. Just don't come, okay?" He hung up abruptly. My mind was filled with questions. What was going on? Why would he push me away like that? Little did I know, an unexpected situation awaited me a few hours later. My name is Sophia. I work for a fairly large stationery company. I've been married to William for 2 years. We're not as passionate as we were in the beginning, but we get along well enough. I just turned 30 the other day. William is older than me, 35 this year. Considering our ages, I've been thinking it's about time to consider having children. One day, William went to a barbecue with a colleague. I was home alone when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find my mother-in-law, Lily. "Lily?" "Sophia, sorry for the sudden visit. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by." "Of course, come on in." "Thank you, I will." The apartment where William and I live is about an hour from the in-laws' house, using the highway. It's not too far, but we don't see Lily very often. I didn't see Lily very often because we were close enough to see each other if I wanted to. Occasionally, like today, Lily would drop by while shopping, or we would visit if we had time. I made coffee and served it with some snacks Lily brought. Lily took a sip of her coffee and said, "Thank you. with a pleased expression. Guess what Mia told me? She's pregnant. What? Mia is? Yes, surprising, isn't it? Mia is William's sister and my sister-in-law. She got married a year before us and now lives out of state. Whenever we meet at family gatherings, Mia always greets me warmly. I find her to be a lovely sister, even if she's my sister-in-law. Especially lately, as I've been thinking about having children, Mia's pregnancy feels even more relatable. I have no feelings of jealousy, just pure happiness for her. Mia and her husband have been married for 3 years now. The timing seems right, doesn't it? Lily nodded at my words. Absolutely. They've enjoyed their time as a couple, and now it's time for a child. I remember going through that phase too. I've been thinking about kids as well. I'm already 30. Don't worry about it. Having kids in your 30s is not uncommon these days. Just go at your own pace. Lily, thank you. We've never had the kind of mother and daughter-in-law drama you see on TV. Lily always greets me with a smile, never pressuring me about having kids. Thanks to her, I've been able to take my time thinking about starting a family. That night, when William returned from the barbecue with his colleague, I brought up my conversation with Lily. Hey, William, Lily came by today, and guess what? Mia is pregnant. Really? Mia is? Yes, can you believe it? We're going to be an uncle and aunt. I wonder if it's a boy or a girl. Exciting, right? Yeah, it's exciting to think about the baby's gender. William's face broke into a smile, tinged with happiness. I felt a slight unease, but assumed he was just happy about the news. At that moment, I genuinely thought so. If he could be this happy about his sister's baby, he should be thinking seriously about having one with me, too. I couldn't help but voice my thoughts. I want a baby, too. What? Sorry, it just slipped out. I'm already 30, and it's about time considering our ages. Oh, right. Sorry. I hadn't really thought about it. No, it's okay. Sorry for bringing it up so suddenly. I apologized, and William said nothing more. I had hoped for words like, I want one too. I want you to have my child. But they never came. Maybe it's understandable that William isn't quite ready for that step. For the past 6 months, he's been coming home late, working overtime almost every day. I always come home after the date has changed. He even works on weekends sometimes. With his busy schedule, he probably doesn't have time to think about kids. I took it that way and didn't bring up the subject again. 3 months later, William was out for work on his day off. Lily called and said she'd bring lunch over. Lily, you didn't have to go to the trouble. It's fine. I had some shopping to do nearby. I was planning to have a simple lunch alone, so this is a treat. Good, then. As we ate the lunch Lily brought, we chatted about this and that. When the conversation turned to Mia's pregnancy, I asked Lily something that had been on my mind. By the way, do you know the gender of Mia's baby yet? Yes, she just told me 3 days ago. It was the first I'd heard. Oh, so you know then? Yes, it's a girl. A girl. That's so cute. Girls' clothes are adorable. They can be expensive, though. But really, as long as the baby is healthy, that's what matters. Absolutely. I hope Mia's baby is born healthy. Let's all look forward to it. According to Lily, Mia's plans to give birth at a hospital near Lily's house. After the birth, she'll stay at the in-laws' house for a while, so we'll have a chance to visit. I'll come by when things have settled down. With that, a pleased Lily left. 2 weeks later, I ended up working late and didn't get home until after 11 p.m. Just as I got out of the bath, William came home. Welcome back, William. You're late again, huh? You too, Sophia. Just out of the bath? Yeah, I had to work late, unusually. So it's good you're here. There's something I want to ask you. What is it? William showed me his phone screen and asked, which one do you think is best? Displayed were various types of baby cribs. There are so many options, he said, his face seemingly glowing as he showed me the screen. That's when I felt a strange sense of discomfort. If William is looking at baby cribs now, it must be a gift for Mia. That's not out of the question. But William is usually frugal, even with me. He keeps my birthday gift strictly under $100. So it didn't make sense that he considered buying a crib for Mia that cost over $500. I cautiously spoke up as he happily browsed through the cribs. Is this crib a gift for Mia? Yeah, it is. She's my sister after all. I should do something nice for her. Wouldn't it be best to ask Mia directly? People have preferences or sizes or specific features. You're right. I'll ask Mia directly. Yeah, that's probably best. William seemed a bit rushed, and something about the way he spoke felt off. From that day on, my sense of unease about his behavior grew. Whenever he had free time, William was on the phone researching baby items. Not just the typical baby clothes for a gift, but pricier items like baby baths, strollers, and car seats. Normally, those are decisions for the parents to be. So why was William so keen on researching baby items? It puzzled me. One day, William came home with a shopping bag from a well-known baby clothing brand. Ta-da! He said, happily showing off the newly purchased clothes. Sophia, look at this. Isn't it super cute? Yeah, it's really cute, but it's for a boy, right? Huh? What William had bought was a onesie for newborns, featuring dinosaur illustrations. It was clearly for a boy. Of course, kids can wear whatever they like, but giving a gift meant for the opposite gender would be considered rude. When I pointed this out, William hastily tried to cover it up. Oh, right, Mia's having a girl. Why did you say it like you didn't know? No, I knew. I just thought this was cute. William quickly put the baby clothes back in the bag and left the living room. This is a gift for Mia, right? Then why didn't he gift wrap it? He just took it out of the bag and showed it to me. I had questions about William's puzzling behavior, but chose not to ask anymore. 2 months later, William was working on his day off. While I was cleaning the house, a message from William popped up on my phone. It was news that Mia had gone into labor. She's in labor? The baby is finally coming? I was so flustered, I didn't know what to do with myself. Filled with excitement, I called William. Hello, William. Is Mia giving birth? Which hospital? Yeah, looks like it. The hospital is a university hospital in the next state. What? Isn't that really far from your parents' house? Well, I can't come back for a while. Why not? Come on, it's obvious. Labor can take hours, and even after that. I see, but are you going to be there from start to finish? Yeah, actually, it seems like the baby might come soon. What? Already? Then I'll head over there right away. Lily often told me that Mia would love to see me, so if the timing worked out, I should visit. But contrary to my expectations, he seemed rushed. Don't come to the hospital. What? Just stay home. You can't do anything here anyway. I might not be able to help, but I want to congratulate Mia. I'll be at the hospital, so just stay home. Don't come, okay? He hung up abruptly. My mind was filled with questions. What's going on? Why did he have to refuse like that? I waited for a few hours, but there was no news of the baby being born. Curious, I decided to call Lily. Lily sounded as calm as ever. Lily, how's Mia doing right now? Huh? Mia? She just went for a walk. A walk during labor? Oh! Lily laughed at my words. Then she told me something unexpected. No, Sophia, the labor is still a ways off. What? The due date is next month. Mia just came over last week. What? Is that true? Don't worry. I'll let you know as soon as labor starts. William, too, of course. At that moment, the worst-case scenario flashed through my mind. The late nights he claimed were due to overtime, the expensive baby cribs he was looking at, and, above all, lying to me about his sister going into labor on a different day. All the discomfort I'd felt suddenly connected. At the same time, a surge of anger welled up inside me. So that's what's been going on. I had believed that William, of all people, wouldn't do this. Well, now, I'm going to make his life a living hell. As I took a deep breath, Lily called my name from the other end of the phone. Sophia! I told Lily the truth. Lily, I think William is cheating on me. What? What do you mean? I can't say for sure, but he sent me this message that he's accompanying Mia in the hospital because she's in labor. What? That can't be. He also bought a onesie for a boy and showed it to me, even though Mia's baby is a girl. You're saying he might have a son with the woman he's cheating with? Probably yes. A heavy silence filled the air. Lily was the first to speak. Wait for me, Sophia. I'm coming over. What? Right now, Lily? Just wait, bye. The call ended, and an hour later, Lily and Mia arrived at my house. Mia, too? We heard William's causing a lot of trouble, so we came. I'm sorry, you're pregnant and it must be hard. Not at all. I can't give birth in peace unless we put that idiot William in his place. Mia grinned triumphantly, and Lily smiled confidently next to her. Their presence solidified my resolve. A few hours later, William came home and looked shocked to see the three of us. What? Why? His face turned pale, as if he was about to faint. Mia spoke first. Why? That's my line. I'm not in labor. Wait, no, that's... Who did you confuse me with? There's no way you could confuse that, right? Well, that's... Mia snatched William's phone and looked at the photos. There were multiple pictures of a woman who had just given birth holding a newborn. Lily confronted William in a low voice. William, what is this? Mom. No excuses, right? If you say it's a misunderstanding, I'll call this woman right now. Please don't. I haven't told her I'm married. You! How much trouble do you have to cause people to be satisfied? William was trembling, his face ashen. I handed him the pre-prepared divorce papers. Sign this now. I'll contact you later about the alimony. Wait, Sophia. I don't intend to divorce you. Don't joke with me. You have a child with another woman, and you expect us to continue as a couple? What you've done is unforgivable. Sign the divorce papers and apologize, you scum. I was so angry, I forgot Lily and Mia were there. In the end, William signed the divorce papers in tears. With the help of Lily and Mia, I consulted a lawyer about the situation, including Harper, the woman he cheated with, and we had a proper discussion. As a result, I demanded compensation from both William and Harper. Harper, who didn't know William was married, had half of her compensation paid by William. Additionally, Harper demanded child support from William. He apparently proposed remarriage to her, but she flatly rejected him, saying, "Just pay the money, you scum. It's all his fault. All I can say is, serves you right. As for me, I still have a relationship with Lily and the others. Mia safely gave birth, and I recently gave her a baby gift. At that time, Mia said, 'Even if you cut ties with that idiot William, you're still you, Sophia, and this child is still your niece.' I can't express how much her kindness saved me. If Lily and Mia hadn't come that day, things wouldn't have ended so cleanly. With gratitude in my heart, I plan to slowly repay their kindness."
For covering the bill, I went ahead and canceled yours.
Staying in a luxury hotel on my wife's dime? Life doesn't get better than this. Haha.
I hear my mother-in-law and husband chuckling loudly. By all means, have a great time. Their laughter suddenly stops when I say this with a smile. You're weird. Don't you realize we tricked you? Wouldn't most people be upset? I haven't been tricked at all. You see, I haven't paid a cent for this trip. My name is Laura, a 32-year-old housewife. I met my husband James through work. He was a client, and we had worked together several times when he invited me to dinner. Since we were the same age, we quickly found common interest and hit it off. We started going out for meals and dates, and before long, we began dating. Fast forward 1 year and we were married. We have now been married for 2 years. But that doesn't mean our married life has been a continuous honeymoon. At first, James was incredibly kind and always treated me with care. So I put a lot of effort into housework to make him happy. James wanted me to be a stay-at-home wife, so I quit my job and fulfilled that role. Every day I prepared breakfast, made lunch, and cooked elaborate dinners. I also kept the house clean, doing the laundry and all sorts of chores diligently.
Life is so comfortable with you around. You're really helping me out.
James used to say that and appreciate my hard work. I was able to give my all each day because of that. However, as we reached the 2-year mark, the spark we had as newlyweds seemed to fade. Lately, I've noticed James growing more indifferent. No matter what I do for him, he doesn't seem to react anymore. Tonight, I made your favorite fried chicken.
All right.
Was work tough today?
Yeah, I guess so.
I filled a bathtub for you, so feel free to take a bath whenever.
Yeah, whatever.
My husband seemed disheartened whenever I spoke to him, offering nothing more than half-hearted acknowledgments. He used to come home from work on time when we first got married, but he's been coming home later and later. He also started going out for drinks without telling me, which often resulted in wasted dinners I had prepared. Is this what they call the 7-year itch? I miss the good old days when we were a loving couple. Was that too much to ask for? But there was another thing bothering me. It was the presence of my mother-in-law, Rose. Ever since we got married, she has never been fond of me, always finding a reason to complain. You are so plain. Can't you wear something more colorful? You probably can because your face is plain too. The food you cook is bland and not even tasty, just terrible. I seriously questioned her character, wondering why she was so mean. Whenever we visited my husband's parents, she would bully me and badmouth me endlessly. After 2 years of marriage, she started bugging us about having a grandchild. How can we start a family under such pressure? Yet, she relentlessly pushed me to have a child. My father-in-law did nothing about his wife's bullying. It's like he found it too troublesome to intervene. My husband also turned a blind eye, offering me no protection. I was devastated. I at least wanted my husband on my side. Feeling utterly lonely, I felt unwell one day and went to the doctor.
You're pregnant.
What? I was shocked, to say the least. I had no idea I was pregnant, but I was thrilled. Having a new family member on the way with my husband filled me with joy and hope for the future. I couldn't wait to share the news with my husband when he got home from work that day.
Really?
Even my usually indifferent husband was wide-eyed. He was overjoyed when I nodded.
Yes, I'm going to be a dad. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah. I was happy that my husband seemed interested in me again after a long time. Both my father-in-law and mother-in-law were also happy about the new grandchild, and they were exceptionally kind to me. Since my family lived far away, my mother-in-law frequently came over to help me during my pregnancy. My husband told me not to overexert myself, and I felt as if the kind husband I knew had returned. However, this happiness was short-lived. The turning point came when I shared the baby's gender. When I told my in-laws that the baby would be a girl, my mother-in-law looked very disappointed. You can't even give birth to a boy, huh? With those harsh words, my mother-in-law made her opinion known. For a second, I wasn't quite sure what she had said, but apparently, she's old-fashioned and thinks it's crucial to have a boy. Once she learned the baby was a girl, she stopped all support during my pregnancy. That meant I had to handle everything on my own when I was feeling my worst. As for my husband, he didn't seem to care about the baby's gender, but he started complaining when I got sick and couldn't keep up with the housework.
You didn't make dinner again and you've been lounging on the couch?
I'm sorry. I'm not feeling well.
Don't be such a baby. I have to go to work even when I'm sick. You're a housewife. Housework is your job.
His lack of consideration for my condition hurt me deeply. The only hope I had was the baby inside me and the thought that we would meet soon. And then I safely gave birth to our daughter. Seeing her for the first time filled me with joy. My husband was also thrilled and emotional when he saw his newborn daughter.
She is as cute as an angel.
I thought the three of us could finally be a happy family. But when we got home from the hospital, he reverted to his cold, distant self. While I do love my daughter, my husband would always leave her to me when she cried. He never bothered with things like changing diapers or giving her a bath. Even when the already busy task of parenting, he didn't consider that and would selfishly ask,
"What about dinner?" or "Is the bath ready?"
Little by little, I started to lose trust in him. The thought of divorce crossed my mind, but our daughter had just been born and I couldn't go to work. So all I could do was wait until she grew up. The only silver lining was that I didn't have to visit my husband's parents because of the childcare. My mother-in-law wasn't interested in my daughter, so my husband didn't complain when I said I didn't want to go. Time flew by while I was focused on raising my daughter, and before I knew it, she turned 3. As she started talking, my husband became more interested in her. Though our relationship had cooled, I appreciated his effort as a father. But something started to bother me. Over the past year, he had been acting strangely. He started caring more about his appearance. He used to just let his hair grow out until I told him to get a haircut. Lately, though, he's been going to the salon himself and getting stylish haircuts. He's also started wearing cologne and has been shopping for clothes like crazy. I wouldn't mind if he just took an interest in fashion, but he's always so restless. And he's been spending more time on his phone lately. Is he cheating on me? So I started watching him more closely. One day, while he was in the bathroom, his phone was left on the table and it dinged with a new message. I was shocked when I saw the message on the screen. It was from a woman named Jennifer saying, "Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow night," accompanied by a lot of heart emojis. I thought he was supposed to be going out for drinks with his co-workers tomorrow. Was he lying and actually meeting up with this woman? Once you start suspecting, everything seems suspicious. I couldn't shake my unease, so I decided to hire a private investigator. Weeks later, the results confirmed my worst fears. He was indeed cheating. Apparently, it's a female colleague from work. No matter how strained our marriage has been, crossing that line is unforgivable. I started preparations for a divorce. I hired a lawyer and even began searching for a job to support my daughter after the divorce. Out of the blue, he proposed a family vacation.
How about we take a trip for Dad's 60th birthday?
Sure, have a great time.
Don't be cold, you're coming too, right?
What? I was shocked. I never expected him to say something like that. What's the deal? You've acted like you're not interested in me.
Likewise, you didn't seem interested in me either. Dad's turning 60. We should all celebrate together, so help me out here.
I didn't really want to go, but when he mentioned the dates, I came up with a plan. Fine, we will leave our daughter with my sister.
Thanks. Also, you can handle the hotel and flight bookings?
What?
I'm busy on weekdays, so I would like you to take care of it.
Alright.
Really appreciate it. Just put it on the credit card. I'll pay you back later.
What?
Apparently, there are benefits if we pay by credit card.
Well, alright. I was hesitant but came up with a plan for that too. He was delighted that I agreed to handle everything. But I was delighted for a different reason. It's time for revenge for betraying me. About a month later, the day for father-in-law's 60th birthday trip arrived. I drove to the airport with my husband. There, we finally reunited with his dad and mom after a long time.
A long time no see, Lara.
It's been a while.
You haven't changed a bit, still looking plain as ever.
And Rose, you're still carrying extra weight. As I see that, the expression in my husband's family goes stiff.
What the heck? You can't just say that, how rude.
You need to apologize to Mom.
Will Rose apologize to me for calling me plain?
Why would I apologize? I just stated the facts.
So did I.
Hey, enough! Don't insult Mom!
At this point, I had nothing to lose, so I wasn't hesitant to pick a fight with my mother-in-law. Oh, could it be that you're not overweight but actually pregnant? You look about the same size as when I was pregnant. My apologies for the mistake.
What's wrong with you? We haven't seen each other in ages and this is how you talk to me? And you can't even have a son?
I really could care less if you call me useless, but for the record, I'm not showing like you are, Rose. I keep provoking her and my mother-in-law storms off saying,
I can't stand to look at your face anymore.
My husband says,
Cool it. Take some time to clear your head.
And walks away with his parents. With a few hours to kill before the flight, they probably went to some cafe. I was relieved to have some time to myself, so I hung out at a coffee shop. Then my husband texts me,
Come to the gate soon.
When I arrive, I see my mother-in-law leaning on my father-in-law. What's going on? I ask my husband.
She got dizzy from being so angry at you.
He says,
Could you get some motion sickness pills? She might get sick on the flight.
Right now? Won't we miss the flight?
We're fine. I'll watch your bags. Go get it.
All right. I step away, suspicious. Understanding they were up to something, I moved just out of sight and then went upstairs to observe my husband and his parents from the second floor. Sure enough, my mother-in-law immediately moved away from my father-in-law and was cheerfully chatting and laughing with my husband. Faking it, huh? My husband and his parents then left my bags right there and headed for the gate. I quickly went back to collect my bags. Can't just leave them, they'll get stolen. A few minutes later, my husband called me. I answered the phone while watching them disappear through the gate. Where are you?
We decided to go without you.
What?
It's what you get for disrespecting Mom.
My mother-in-law grabs the phone.
Thanks for the payment. We canceled only your ticket.
Staying in a fancy hotel with your money will be so sweet.
I heard my mother-in-law and husband burst into loud laughter. They probably never intended to bring me along in the first place. Well, I never planned on going either. Enjoy yourselves, alright? When I said that with a smile, their laughter suddenly stopped.
You're strange. Don't you realize we tricked you? Shouldn't you be upset?
No tricks here. I didn't pay a dime for this trip.
What?
I heard my husband's voice, probably because they had the call on speaker.
What's going on?
Explaining would be a hassle. So I'll tell you later. Bye. I said that and hung up the phone. Then I immediately left the airport and hit the road. I headed to the new rental condo I had secured. Boxes were already there and my sister and her husband were waiting for me. While I was at the airport with my in-laws, they had moved all my belongings for me. I was beyond grateful, especially since they also took care of my daughter. Once we started unpacking in the new place, we were done in no time. As a thank you, I took my sister and her husband to a steakhouse and we all enjoyed a nice meal. My husband kept calling, but I ignored it. The next day, he called again around noon, so I finally answered.
Hey, were you lying yesterday? I enjoyed a suit in your place.
Sure, why wouldn't you? It's already paid for.
What? What are you saying?
I changed the account where my credit card payments get drawn from to our joint account. And I moved all the money I put in there to my own account.
So what does that mean?
Basically, the trip was paid for with the money you put in that account.
What? So I paid for it?
Yes, exactly.
You have got to be kidding. How much did it cost?
Plane tickets and all, maybe around $5,000 for 4 adults.
Why 4? Only 3 of us went on the trip.
Last-minute cancellations don't get refunded, you know. My husband was speechless over the phone.
Why would you do this? Do you hate me?
It's not about hate, it's just a little payback for the man who cheated.
What?
I have evidence of your affair, just so you know. He gasped in disbelief. Prepare yourself for a divorce, alimony, and child support.
You can't be serious.
You brought this on yourself. From now on, we'll communicate through lawyers. I said that and hung up on him. After that, I hired a lawyer to handle various procedures. The divorce went through smoothly, and I got compensation from my husband and his affair partner. I switched the credit card payment back to my account after the travel expenses were paid. Of course, I'm also demanding child support from my husband. It seems he couldn't cover the payments with his own earnings and savings, so he borrowed money from parents-in-law. Parents-in-law also apparently drained all their savings by covering their son's debt. Now, my husband has moved back in with his parents and they seem to be living a poor life together. Serves them right. I have no intention of letting my daughter meet her ex-father, and I haven't told him where we have moved. Marrying such a terrible man is regrettable, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to have met my daughter. From now on, I plan to live happy days just with my daughter.
Good morning. It seems like it's going to rain this afternoon. I'll turn on the dehumidifier to prevent any headaches. I offer flowers to the altar, recalling that smile from days past. I miss you now that you're gone, but I'm living strong. Then, now, and always. I'm Kathy, 29 years old. I've been married and living with my husband's family for 6 years now. I was raised in a household with some old-fashioned beliefs, and I had an arranged marriage as my parents wanted. My husband's family, too, has their fair share of old traditions. There's a slight departure from the common sense of the general public. However, life isn't as stifling as I thought it would be. My father-in-law, a firm head of the family, and my mother-in-law, who occasionally spouts strange things but is harmless, treated me kindly. My husband, Andy, is busy with the family business. We're not exactly a sweet couple, and I feel a bit disappointed that he isn't keen on having kids. But overall, we had a good relationship. That was until my father-in-law left this world. Oh, Kathy, you're daydreaming again. The weather's getting weird, too. It's so gloomy and damp every day. Talking to a photo every day is so morbid. My mother-in-law never ceases to complain. Good morning. When I went out to the garden, I saw my father-in-law's favorite flowers, so I cut some before the rain starts, I said with a forced smile. I didn't want to spoil my happy morning mood here, but my mother-in-law looked even more annoyed. What's this? You're making a big show of offering flowers. You just want to say you're taking care of things, right? Is this some sort of snub at me? I sigh inwardly. Honestly, you really don't have any common sense. Even if the forecast says it's going to rain, turning on the dehumidifier beforehand is just a waste of electricity. Who do you think pays for that? Since my father-in-law passed away, she seems to have lost her filter. What used to be occasional nitpicking has significantly increased. At first, I thought it was a way of venting her loneliness after losing her husband, but lately she seems to be looking for me just to criticize. Andy asked me to wash and dry the shirt he's going to use for his business trip starting tomorrow. Drying it here is the fastest. But with the weather turning rainy this afternoon, it's hard to air dry clothes naturally. Blaming Andy for your inability to prepare in advance. How embarrassing for a wife as clumsy as you, to be able to claim you're a good housewife despite your mistakes. How awful. My mother-in-law's face twisted even more, but I'm not neglecting my chores. It's impossible to prepare for a sudden laundry request in advance. However, she persistently nitpicks without considering such circumstances. She said it's gloomy and damp earlier, but I feel the same way about her. She's much more troublesome than the sticky humidity. What's more, she's always exaggerating the daytime events to my husband, always painting me as the bad guy. Initially, my husband ignored it, but recently he's been saying, "It's annoying, make her stop," or "Isn't it your fault?" and getting in a bad mood. As a result, there's no sign of my mother-in-law's criticisms or her false tattling stopping. On the contrary, they seem to be escalating. But if I confront her, her shrill voice only gets louder, reaching frequencies that echo outside the house. In the end, letting her do as she pleases and apologizing to let the storm pass was the most peaceful way to deal with it. I'm exhausted. I'm sorry, father-in-law, for showing you such a mess. My mother-in-law's face twisted even more, but I'm not neglecting my chores. When my father-in-law collapsed from a stroke, my mother-in-law said, "I don't have the strength for caregiving," and did almost nothing. During changes in the weather or season, my father-in-law, who suffered from headaches and joint pain, would be grateful to me for my strenuous efforts to maintain a constant temperature and humidity. He would warmly smile and thank me, saying, "It's quite different now, thank you." As someone who had lost her real father in her childhood, I was initially confused about how to interact with my father-in-law, but he was very gentle, even while being steadfast. I feel like he thanked me in various situations. He was someone who was not stingy with his words towards anyone, and was positive about everyday events. What stands out to me is when I was still new to the household, before I became accustomed to the kitchen, I once forgot to turn on the stove while concentrating and learning the household seasoning for cooking. When it was time for the meal, I realized I hadn't cooked the potatoes. I braced myself, expecting to be scolded, but my father-in-law laughed it off and said, "Human beings feel a meal is even more delicious when they're hungry, so let's wait patiently." He even went on to thank me for always providing delicious meals. In this way, he lightened my spirits, and this attitude did not change even when he fell ill. Even during my first experience with caregiving, which I wasn't proficient in, he kept telling me, "You're a lifesaver, thank you." He was like my real father. That's why, even though time has passed since he passed away, I still find myself taking to his picture every morning, and I'm concerned about the room temperatures and humidity before it rains. My mother-in-law, who's become more harsh, and I sought solace in his smiling picture. Hey, what's this, all wrinkled and covered in fur? One night while cleaning up after dinner, my husband Andy came holding a shirt I had ironed and put it in the suitcase in the evening. "And what about our bedroom? It's a mess, and the stuff for tomorrow's trip is all scattered. What the hell? I told you I'm leaving early tomorrow." Andy has also changed since my father-in-law passed away. He has become harsher. I truly realized that my father-in-law was the pillar of this household. Andy threw the shirt at me with a stern face, and I was surprised. "Wait, what? What do you mean the stuff is all scattered?" "Hold on, this..." From the wide open window, the rain was pouring in sideways, drenching the curtains. And on the bed, the luggage had spilled out of the suitcase and was scattered about. In a hurry, I closed the window and crashed down to wipe up the poured-in rain. "Huh? Brownie?" In the corner of the room, there was a community cat, Brownie. "Poor thing, you're shaking so much. Come here, I'll dry you off." Despite the disastrous state of the room, I couldn't ignore the drenched cat, so I gently wrapped Brownie in a towel. "I know you're not the kind of kitten who would do something like this." Holding Brownie, who was purring lightly, I consoled him. "Hey, what are you doing?" Then I heard Andy's irritated voice from behind. "That's a stray cat, isn't it? Don't use a towel on something like that, and that thing probably made the mess in the room. Get it out of here now." Behind the disgruntled Andy was my mother-in-law. "What a mess! The room, the stuff for the trip, everything is all messed up. And what's that dirty thing? Using a fine towel, and that is unbelievable. I'm speechless at your lack of common sense." She's hardly speechless, she's triumphantly blabbing. "Prioritizing a cat that broke into the house and caused this mess over the actual disaster. You must be out of your mind." My mother-in-law's voice, louder than ever, made me finally retort. "With all due respect, mother-in-law, it wasn't Brownie who made the mess in the room, right?" "Huh! That can't be." My mother-in-law defended herself, but it didn't make sense no matter how you look at it. Because the shirt that Andy brought was wrinkled and covered in fur, but it wasn't wet. If a soaked cat caused a mess, the shirt and the luggage should be wet too, shouldn't they? Exactly, the stuff on the bed was messy, but not wet at all. Rather, only the shirt was covered in fur. The rest seemed merely scattered. And I had the suitcase closed and placed next to the shelf. It would be impossible for a cat to move it to the bed, unlock it, and mess it up. That's not all. My mother-in-law's hand was covered in several band-aids. She didn't have them in the morning, so it's proof she injured herself in the afternoon. If my guess is correct, those scratches are from being scratched by Brownie. The windows are intact, and so are the screens. How on earth could the cat have gotten in on its own? Moreover, only where this little one was is it soaking wet. There aren't even any wet footprints. Without someone deliberately doing it, this couldn't have happened. As I talked while keeping eye contact, my mother-in-law, Kathy, backed away inch by inch. Her demeanor was almost as if she were confessing her guilt. And the bandage on your hand. But before I could finish my sentence, my husband's voice boomed. "Shut up!" Caught off guard by his loud voice, I cringed, to which my husband, Andy, spat out angrily. "I don't care. Just kick it out and clean up quickly. Don't make me repeat myself. I have to get up early tomorrow. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Get it ready fast." Surprised by Andy's outrage, I pushed back. It does matter. This is over the top no matter how you look at it. This isn't something you can brush off as a mere prank. We need to take it seriously. I couldn't hide my anger at Kathy's excessive behavior, but Andy was dismissive. "Don't mess with me. It's your job to sort out the house issues. Do I ever bring my work problems home and complain? No, right? Even after coming home tired, I can't rest every single day. I have to listen to such unpleasant stuff. I'm fed up." He vented out furiously. It seemed as though his pent-up frustration at having to listen to my daily complaints about Kathy was overflowing all at once, but that wasn't fair. I never grumbled to Andy. It was Kathy who kept feeding him lies. Why am I the one getting blamed? I'm having a hard time too. I opened my mouth again, but Andy, still angry, grabbed my arm and dragged me to the front door. "That's enough. Go somewhere else. If you weren't here, my mom wouldn't have anything to complain about." Before I could even put on my shoes, I was pushed outside. I heard the sound of a lock clicking into place. "Hey, wait a minute. Open up, Andy. Hey, hey!" I called out in a loud voice, but there was no response from Andy, only the sound of Kathy's malicious laughter. Even though I couldn't see her, I could easily imagine Kathy's spiteful smile. "Just like that dirty stray cat, perhaps a stray daughter-in-law would be more appropriate. Serves you right." After that, the light in the entrance was turned off and I was left out in the pouring rain, holding the cat in my arms. I can't believe it. After I was locked out of our house and had to take refuge at my parents' place, and a few days later, I was summoned again to the house. They were a historically significant family, so my mother cautioned me not to get divorced and apologize. However, I was feeling down. I'm probably going to be scolded. I thought about having a discussion, but now I might as well say that I want a divorce. He hasn't contacted me since that day. Feeling heavy-hearted when I arrived, I found a room full of relatives, and the atmosphere was more daunting than I had anticipated. In contrast, Kathy and Andy, whom I hadn't seen for a while, looked triumphant. Could this be about disowning me? This is a bigger deal than I thought. I became even more nervous, but the head of the main house, who would be my grandfather-in-law, said something unexpected. "The reason I gathered everyone here today is to discuss the inheritance. We plan to switch to distribution, keeping up with the times." This was not at all what I expected. I was relieved that it seemed I wasn't going to be blamed. On the other hand, Kathy and Andy became excited, pushing their way through the relatives. "How will the assets be divided specifically? What about the house we're living in? There's land, vacation homes, and a company too." Kathy brazenly put forth her greedy demands. She whispered to Andy that he should seize this opportunity to gain control of the business given his promotion. Andy didn't seem entirely against the idea. Seeing their shamelessly happy faces, I decided once and for all to go through with the divorce. I could easily imagine my future with the wealth-seeking Andy and Kathy, who would accuse me of being a freeloader and gold digger. It would be better to cut ties cleanly. Right now, they would likely be happy to divorce. But then, "There's no property for you two to inherit." My grandfather-in-law rejected Kathy and Andy's expectations with a heavy sigh. "What?" The patriarch spoke to the two of them, who were taken aback. "I will bequeath my assets to Kathy. There's none for you two." Having my name abruptly called, I was at a loss for words, and my in-laws were flabbergasted. "You must be joking. A wife doesn't have such rights, and she's run away from home abruptly without a shred of responsibility. A failure who doesn't even bear children. We were thinking of disowning her, right, Andy?" Yeah, it's a hassle to have a dispute at home. If we don't have enough hands to manage the house and the business, hiring people is more efficient. It's better for our mental health, I think. They coldly discarded me. Then the patriarch, who had heard the statements, pulled out an envelope from his pocket. A will? The patriarch solemnly read out to the stunned couple the will of his son, my father-in-law. In the event of a dispute after his death, all borrowed property should be returned to the main family. However, in regard to his wife, Kathy, she continued to receive the protection of the main family. In other words, no matter what happens, I would always be able to live with the support of the main family. What? That's a lie, right? My husband was speechless and my mother-in-law was in shock. The patriarch shrugged his shoulders. Kathy, I plan to bequeath you the property you need to live. If I lend it, it will tie you to this house. But if I bequeath it, you can live alone even if you divorce. Or you could remain our daughter-in-law and remarry if you want. I was also adopted, so I can somewhat understand your position. As the main family, we will respect your decision, so don't worry. The patriarch who said this and laughed resembled my father-in-law in my memory. Well, wait, that's too much. What did we do? She ran away on her own. We are the victims here. She argued vehemently that it was me, the wife, who was in the wrong. There is no need to add insult to injury. Huh? What are you talking about? As my mother-in-law tilted her head, an unexpected person appeared in the living room at the patriarch's door. The elderly neighbor from next door? To my surprised face, the cheerful man showed me an envelope that was identical to the will I had seen earlier. I was asked by your father-in-law to contact the main family if something happened at home. When I saw them kick out the wife alone, barefoot and penniless on a pouring night, I didn't think it was right, so I stepped in. Right, Brownie? The old man, carrying Brownie in his arms, handed him over to me. Thank you for the shoes and transportation money that time. I couldn't personally thank you, and you went out of your way to consider this. As I thanked him, hugging the warm Brownie, he brushed it off. It's give and take. We help each other when in trouble. He used to say, he was a good man. That you were going through a tough time after he was gone is a well-known fact to the neighbors. You held up well. My eyes grew hot. My father-in-law, till his last, had sown seeds of kindness. Thanks to that, my neighbors were on my side. Even now, do you insist on being the victims? The patriarch asked in a stern voice. My husband and mother-in-law, who were watching our exchange with their mouths agape. If you can't respect someone as an outsider, then you should leave. Andy, you don't need to come to the company anymore. The two of you start over somewhere else and become people who understand shame. At the patriarch's roar, my husband and mother-in-law shrank back. Under the cold gaze of the patriarch and the gathered relatives, my husband and mother-in-law looked like they were sitting on a bed of nails. Afterwards, under the supervision of the main family, my mother-in-law and husband left the house. My husband struggled to find a new job, and they seemed to have started working part-time together. As for me, I divorced, but chose to stay at home. With the patriarch's permission, I am now taking care of my father-in-law's memorial monument. The main family also shows consideration, telling me to consult them if there are changes such as remarriage. We've received some peaches in season from next door. Let's eat them together, as it's their first harvest year. Here, a little share for you too, Brownie. I think I will cherish these peaceful days surrounded by my father-in-law's portrait and the smiles of my neighbors.
What on earth is this? Have some shame! Without hearing my side, mother-in-law is yelling at the top of her lungs, her face red with anger. The reason she is fuming like a raging fire? It's because of the flashy underwear hanging on the balcony. But I don't recognize those undergarments. In fact, even the size isn't mine. Yet mother-in-law keeps accusing me, without doubt, calling them disgusting and in bad taste. I couldn't stand mother-in-law anymore and finally burst out. Those aren't mine. Huh? Mother-in-law and I stared at each other, frozen in place. A few hours later, an unbelievable truth would emerge. My name is Eleanor, 28 years old. I work for a clothing company, mainly in charge of designing and planning products. For the past few years, I've been consigning products to various online shopping sites. I'm always busy creating new products. My husband's name is Kevin, 30, 2 years older than me. I met him when I was 25 through a mutual friend, and it evolved into a relationship. After dating for a year, we got married 2 years ago. Kevin is usually calm and goes at his own pace. On the other hand, I'm pretty impatient, so I think we balance each other out. I truly felt blessed to be married and spend my time with him. Due to work, I often travel on business trips. This means I'm frequently away from home. I had explained the situation before we got married, and Kevin understood. However, about a year after our marriage, mother-in-law started complaining about it. "Eleanor, you left the house for 3 days again?" When I returned from a trip, mother-in-law was nagging me with a disapproving tone. "Oh, mother-in-law, why are you here?" "What do you mean? Can't I visit my son's house? I heard you were away for work, so I came to help with the housework." "Ah, thank you, but it's common for me to be away for 3 days and Kevin can manage on his own." "What? You should know it's always been the woman's job to take care of the home, yet you always—" She glared at me, her face flushed, as if I was the one at fault. I always struggled with mother-in-law's direct and blunt personality. During family meetings, she never missed a chance to nag, making me apprehensive even before marrying. But I thought, I won't be living with her, and as long as I can be with my beloved Kevin. So I decided to marry him. Yet, I never imagined she'd complain this much just because I had to go on a few days of business trips. From that day, every time I went to a business trip, she'd show up at our home. While I appreciated her looking after Kevin while I was away, the reprimands I'd get upon returning became routine. 2 years into the marriage, and she hasn't changed. Today, I returned from a 2-day business trip only to be greeted by her intimidating face. "Eleanor, why did you go on another business trip? I mean, it's my job." "Huh? Job? What do you even do? Or are you pretending it's work and actually having fun?" What? Why would you say that?" "Well, Kevin's a good boy. He wouldn't doubt you, so someone has to keep you in line." With that, she enthusiastically started preparing dinner. She didn't leave until after 11 p.m. Her constant complaints about everything made it unbearable. I let this moment pass, the cycle would just repeat. Thinking this, I approached Kevin, who was relaxing with a beer after his bath. "Kevin, can we talk?" "What? I've got work tomorrow. I wanted to sleep after this drink." "I'm sorry, but this is important." Seeing my serious expression, he reluctantly set down his beer and asked, "What's up?" "It's about your mom. Can you ask her not to come over every time I'm on a business trip?" "Why? She's just helping out with chores when you're not around. It's helpful, isn't it?" "It might be for you, but I can't handle her constant digs at me anymore. Today she even implied I lied about work to go have fun. She probably didn't mean anything by it, and it's not like I'm asking her to come. She's doing it on her own. Shouldn't you be grateful?" "What are you saying?" "It's not about him asking or not asking. I just wanted him to understand how uncomfortable it makes me feel." The moment he said be grateful, I realized he sided with his mother. He doesn't understand the gravity of the situation, and I was deeply frustrated. However, backing down now would mean nothing. I carefully chose my words and explained my feelings to my husband again. "Please, can't you take this a bit more seriously? Think about how I feel, being criticized every time I return from a business trip." Hey, what's gotten into you, Eleanor? You've never said anything like this before. That's because she's Kevin's mom, the one I love. That's why I've been putting up with it all this time. But I've reached my limit. I can't stand her bossing me around anymore." "What are you talking about? You make it sound like my mom's kindness is a bother. I didn't think you were like that, Eleanor." He downed the bear on his desk and stormed out of the living room. Why? We weren't done talking. Left alone in the room, an indescribable emptiness overwhelmed me. No matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't figure out the right words to reach him. I thought Kevin would understand if I confided in him. If things keep going like this, nothing will change. If his mom is there the next time I return from a business trip, I decided in my heart that next time we'd have a proper one-on-one conversation. A few weeks later, I have to leave for a 3-day business trip. Before leaving the house, I cautiously approached my husband. Kevin, your mom, she's not coming today, right? This again? Talking about my mom? Just answer me. I hope you haven't invited her. Stop nagging me. How I spend my time when you're not here is my business. Stop trying to control everything. He yelled and let out an irritated sigh. Even when I called out, "I'm leaving now," he ignored me. In the end, I left for the business trip, not knowing if his mother would come. Even as I was working away from home, thoughts of her kept creeping into my mind. Though I used to focus on my job without any concerns, now I was completely distracted. I was surprised at how mentally drained I felt, but I couldn't back down now. As I had decided earlier, if his mom is at home next time, we'll definitely have a proper talk. That resolution remained unchanged. When I returned from my business trip, I opened the front door with trepidation. And as I had expected, I saw his mother's shoes in the entrance. She was cheerfully singing and cooking in the kitchen. She seemed to notice my footsteps and turned around before I could greet her. "Oh, Eleanor, it seems like you've been out playing for days, haven't you? Did you have fun?" I was instantly annoyed by her phrase. Out playing. I wasn't playing, I was just working. "Oh, making excuses again? You're such a hopeless wife, always talking big. That's what happens when a woman works outside." She sighed dramatically and glared at me. Though I flinched at her sharp gaze for a moment, I gathered my courage and initiated the conversation. "I have something to talk to you about today." "Oh, perfect timing. I have something to tell you as well." "What?" Mother-in-law forcefully grabbed my hand and dragged me to the balcony. Pointing at the laundry hanging there, she demanded with a fiery tone, "Mind explaining this? What is this?" That should be my line. "What is this mess? Have you some decency?" What mother-in-law pointed at were several flashy pieces of underwear hanging out to dry. They were adorned with bright red and pink lace, drawing immediate attention. They covered the bare minimum. Mother-in-law's face turned bright red as she yelled at me. "You're trying to seduce other men with these, aren't you?" "Hold on, mother-in-law, just calm down for a second. How can I possibly stay calm with these? Hiding such indecent underwear in Kevin's room. Did you think you wouldn't get caught? No, listen. Such disgusting taste in underwear. This isn't Kevin's style at all. You have such terrible taste. Are you having an affair? Who is it? Tell me." "It's not like that. Please, just listen to me. No more excuses. We never should have let Kevin marry someone like you. I expect you to divorce him immediately. Do you understand? You hussy." At that moment, all the negative emotions I had held back surged forth. Before I knew it, I had thrown my bag on the floor and was glaring fiercely at mother-in-law. "What's with that look?" With a tone as cold as ice, I replied to the emotional mother-in-law, "These aren't mine." Time seemed to freeze at those words. With a deer-in-the-headlights expression, mother-in-law stood still. Clearing up the facts, I said, "Mother-in-law, I think there has been a misunderstanding. Those aren't my underwear. I don't wear such bright colors, and the size isn't even right." What are you talking about? Then whose underwear is this? I saw them for the first time today. Didn't you say earlier they were found in Kevin's room? Well, yes. I thought I'd help him pick out some fall clothes. So I was organizing his closet. That's when I found a bag at the back and these came out of it. Oh, really? Well, I don't know anything about it. Let's wait for him to come home. Mother-in-law, as if she had come to some realization, went pale and sat on the sofa. Of course, I had a bad feeling about it too. Yet, I acted strong, not showing mother-in-law my unease. An hour later, with a casual "I'm home," my husband returned. As he entered the living room, I planted myself firmly in front of him, looking stern. "What's going on, Eleanor? And why is Mom here too? Did you two have a fight or something?" "It's not that. Mother-in-law and I have something we need to ask you." "Me?" Kevin looked stunned. I threw at him the underwear that had been drying on the balcony. His face turned pale instantly upon seeing them. Without missing a beat, I confronted him. "What's the meaning of this? Mother-in-law said she found this in Kevin's room." I mean, they're obviously for women. When, where, and why did you buy these? Care to explain? I'm really sorry." Kevin began an overly exaggerated apology. Taking a deep breath, he started to explain. According to him, he had been dating a younger woman from his office for a year. He bought underwear to his taste and had her wear them whenever they met. They enjoyed this little game every time. When I was away on business, he had mother-in-law come over just for the last day to help with the piled-up chores. All other days, he invited his affair partner to our home and had her wear that lingerie. He probably never thought I'd found out. His voice quivered throughout, and tears seemed to form in his eyes. While I stared at Kevin with a disgusted look, mother-in-law watched him with concern. Suddenly, mother-in-law shouted at me. "Enough is enough. Why are you pushing Kevin like this? What's your aim?" "Excuse me? I'm just asking for an explanation. It's because you're not appealing enough that Kevin's affections shifted to someone else. It's all your fault, always working and never being there." "And so what?" I shot back at mother-in-law. "Is there some rule that it's okay to cheat while one's wife is immersed in her job?" Well, even now, mother-in-law tried to defend her cheating son. I yelled at her. "You two are unbelievable. Your son is the one who cheated, and yet you dare to say something like you're not appealing enough? No matter the reason, there is no excuse for cheating." I get it, just calm down." "Really? From which mouth are you saying that? This is the result of you raising your son to be a mama's boy, isn't it? Shouldn't you be scolding him first?" I sighed deeply. "Anyway, I should thank you, because you found that flashy lingerie. I can now file for a divorce that works in my favor." "Divorce? Did you say divorce?" Kevin finally reacted. "Please, forgive me. Haven't I apologized enough? A divorce will ruin my career." Mother-in-law desperately chimed in. "Exactly. Divorcing over just an affair. You are simply not tolerant enough. A wife should forgive her husband's little affairs." "Just an affair? I'm not the unfortunate wife who tolerates her husband's cheating. I'll make sure to get every penny in the divorce settlement. Be prepared, you worthless mother and son duo." Right after that, I packed all my belongings and left the house. Once I found a new place and settled in, I contacted a lawyer about the divorce and compensation. I demanded compensation not just from my husband, but also from the woman he cheated with. Turns out, she was a junior colleague at his workplace. A co-worker spotted them arguing about the conversation. And news of their affair spread like wildfire in the office. They were instantly treated with disdain. Unable to handle the office gossip, she resigned on her own. Meanwhile, Kevin had to stay at his job just because of the compensation he owed. Still, his reputation plummeted, and all his hard work over the years seemed to wash away. The position he'd worked so hard for collapsed, and I heard he's now stuck in a deep-end job. But even more tragic was the fate of his mother-in-law. She got exposed for harassing me, and for defending her cheating son. Her husband, father-in-law, found out and apparently served her with divorce papers. She was kicked out of the home they had shared and went to stay with Kevin in his apartment. But, struggling with rent, Kevin and mother-in-law had to move into a smaller place together. They constantly blame each other for their misfortunes, maintaining their usual toxic relationship. It seems it's only a matter of time before they self-destruct. As for me, I'm back to enjoying the freedom of being single. I want to continue my job without any hesitation and live a life I'm truly content with.
Finally, off on time. Great job, me, I said, standing up from my desk. Working in sales overtime is not uncommon for me, but today, I was determined to leave right on time. Why? Because my favorite actor's starring drama was premiering tonight. I had to watch it live. With that thought, I left the office in high spirits. My husband should be cooking dinner, so I planned to eat and relax before the drama started. Oh, maybe I could enjoy a drink too. At home, I just want to unwind with my husband. Lounging on the sofa and watching TV is the best. I wanted to tell my overly excited self to calm down a bit. If only I could have a glimpse of the future at that moment, things might have turned out differently. My name is Alicia. I am a 27-year-old office worker. My husband Philander and I are in our first year of marriage. We are still in that sweet honeymoon phase. Philander, my college junior, has an innocent smile that I find adorable. He's a bit unreliable but has many friends and a cheerful personality, so being with him is always fun. That's why I married him. I'm home, I said, returning with some drinks. The smell of fried chicken wafted all the way to the entrance. Hungry, I entered the living room only to face a reality I couldn't accept.
Welcome back,
Philander said, smiling innocently, but that wasn't the issue. Who are you? I couldn't take my eyes off the man in the aloha shirt sitting there. I had passed a straw hat at the entrance without noticing, too excited about the drama. He nodded at me while eating fried chicken, and I instinctively nodded back. No, wait, that's not it. Who? Then Philander turns to me and says nonchalantly,
my friend, we just happened to meet at the station.
What? Invite a friend you just happened to meet at the station to our house out of the blue? Without even telling me? My mood takes a nosedive at this point. Philander seems to have lived alone since his student days, leading a rather carefree life. He has many friends, so he often stayed at their houses or invited them over. Even after marriage, this kind of things happens frequently. Moreover, most of these people are strangers to me. Sometimes there are even girls among them. I take Philander to another room and confront him. What's going on? You know you should tell me in advance if you're inviting someone over.
But I just happened to meet them, so I couldn't tell you in advance.
Then don't invite friends you just happen to meet to our house, understand? I feel like I'm lecturing a grade school child.
I had a lot to talk about since I haven't seen them in a while, so I brought them here.
Then go out for drinks or something.
But it was my turn to make dinner.
Is he serious? No. Is he really serious? Sometimes I just don't understand Philander's way of thinking. You could say he's earnest or inflexible, something like that. As this is going on, it's almost time for our favorite TV show. I sigh and decide to retreat to my room. Give me some dinner. With that, Philander scratches his head and says,
I ate it all.
I couldn't find his childlike gesture endearing, and I raised my voice without thinking. If you eat it all, it's pointless. Oh, I'm hungry. This happens at least once a month. I'm getting tired of getting angry every time. Did we rush into marriage? The next day, Philander comes home and we talk. I tell him I don't want strangers in our house, that I have said it many times, and if it continues, I'll consider divorce. Divorce? Philander is visibly shaken. It's only natural. I've told you many times. Also, please put in this month's living expenses soon. And you often invite friends but don't charge them for food, right? You should cover that cost, Philander. I'll cook, but I won't clean up. Don't make me say the same thing over and over. Then Philander nods sullenly. Will he understand now? Surely peaceful times will come now. A month later, when I come home from work and enter the entrance, I see unfamiliar bags and hats. No way. I rush to open the living room door and there are strangers again. Welcome back. Philander greets me with an unapologetic smile. My anger explodes. What's going on here? Everyone is taken aback and the atmosphere becomes tense. But I don't care. I have told you to stop this. Philander and his two friends visibly flinch. As I approach Philander, his friends quickly leave. I told you last time, right? You didn't forget what I said, did you? I said if it happens again, we're getting a divorce. Philander tries to calm me down, but I can't take it anymore. Don't you understand how it feels to come home from work and finally relax? I can't relax with strangers around, can I? They might be your friends, Philander, but they're strangers to me. I don't even know them. Why don't you understand? Then Philander starts making excuses. But Alicia, I thought it would be fun to have a lively house, and since I was on dinner duty, I thought it would be okay. Unable to control my anger, I smile. Understood. With that, I retreat to my room. The next day, I leave for work and head to the government office. Naturally, I'm going to get divorce papers. I fill in my name on the spot and head home. I wake up the sleeping Philander and thrust the divorce papers at him. What? What's this? Divorce papers? Huh? Philander is in a panic, but I have no sympathy left for him. I'm calling the movers to take my stuff. With that, I contact the moving company I booked yesterday, and they're ready to come right away. Wait a minute, what's going on? What's happening? Not understanding the situation, Philander continues to panic. I tell him, let's get a divorce. Despite saying that, he keeps asking why and how, and I couldn't take it anymore. I told you if it happened again, we would get a divorce. I have expressed my feelings, haven't I? How many times do I have to say it? I can't go on with you. Let's get a divorce. After saying it once more, Philander finally seems to understand and his face turns pale. He apologizes repeatedly, trying to gain forgiveness. I'm sorry, really sorry. Please reconsider. How can I live without Alicia? As this is going on, the movers arrive. I brush off Philander and welcome the movers with a smile. Furniture, appliances, my belongings. Philander watches in shock as they're carried out one by one. All of them were bought with my savings from when I was single. Some were even things I used when I lived alone. Speaking of which, there's also the expensive table and sofa that he said he would pick out for me because my room wasn't stylish before we got married. But since I bought them with my money, I'll take them. The movers are efficient and the room is quickly cleared. Hey, Alicia, wait! How am I supposed to live? I was a fool to think his helplessness was part of his charm. I feel so pathetic I could cry. I bring over 2 large cardboard boxes. These are the things you used before we got married. You'll be fine with these. I don't need them, so I'm giving them back. Inside are a small rice cooker, frying pan, and pots. Also, I have decided to cancel the lease at the end of the month, so you better leave soon. Philander clings to me as I speak calmly, but I am too angry to bear it any longer. That's how important this space was to me. Why didn't he understand? A promise is a promise. Write this quickly. I forcibly hand a pen to Philander, who is still reluctant to fill out the divorce papers. I told you clearly, if it happened again, we would divorce. It's no joke. I have told you to stop so many times. Besides, this condominium is in my name. You moved into the place where I lived when I was single, Philander. Yet, why do you keep doing whatever you want? Finally realizing I was serious, Philander reluctantly began to fill out the divorce papers. You said you would work hard to get promoted quickly when we got married, but in the end, it seems like people at work say you can't do your job. Thanks to that, you have a low salary. No prospects for promotion. You don't even contribute to living expenses. I should have chosen a more reliable man." As I sighed, Philander looked frustrated. I never thought we would divorce over something so trivial. It was a short marriage. I can't live with someone who can't think of others. I snatched the divorce papers and left the house. I decided to live in the company dormitory for a while and take my time looking for a condominium. At least for now, I can have my own space. But that peaceful life was soon shattered. A week later, while relaxing in my dormitory, my mobile phone rang. It was Philander. I answered the phone, annoyed, and he said he wanted to talk and asked me to meet him. Honestly, I thought it was a hassle, but it would be more troublesome if he kept bothering me. I agreed and headed to the condominium we hadn't yet canceled. When I arrived at the entrance, Philander greeted me. As I entered the living room, Philander's mother was there. Why? My eyes widened as mother-in-law suddenly started accusing me.
Alicia, what's this about suddenly wanting a divorce? How is this child supposed to live on his own?
Mother-in-law adored Philander and always meddled in our affairs. I told her everything.
I heard from Philander, but what's wrong with that? Isn't it good to have many friends? It's fun every day.
No, it's not fun. To me, they're strangers. And why is his mother showing up now? My irritation grew.
It's so pitiful that Philander is being divorced over something like this.
Mother-in-law looked like she was about to cry, whether genuinely or not. Oh, really? So I am not pitiful? I almost said those words, but swallowed them.
It's pitiful for my son to be divorced. I should have married him to a younger girl.
I reached my limit at that point. After all, she's a stranger to me now. I don't need to hold back. Yes, marrying a younger girl and getting financial help from parents to support the marriage would be something new. Or maybe you're looking for a high-earning young girl. Living in a cheap apartment with low salaries might work too. It fits your lifestyle. When I said that, both mother-in-law and Philander stared at me shocked. From the beginning, Philander wanted to live in a nice condominium, wanted stylish furnitures, and had desires he couldn't fulfill with his earnings. So I contributed more to living expenses. I thought it was okay since we were married, but inviting various friends into our space without any consultation is beyond common sense, don't you think? I glared and mother-in-law looked away. Having many friends and having fun? Do you really think so? If you do, shall I bring my friends to your house and suddenly drop in? I'll visit suddenly when you're relaxing, mother-in-law. Mother-in-law shook her head, trembling. Then, you understand how I feel, right? You can't say such things because it's not your business. I turned to Philander. And Philander, remember when you said you didn't want me to invite my friends over because you didn't know them? You didn't come home all day that time, did you? I've always felt that way. Why don't you understand? I clearly remembered something I had almost forgotten. Philander looked guilty. So, why did you bring mother-in-law here? Did you think you could persuade me and live a wealthy life again? Finally, Philander spoke. But we said we'd be together forever when we got married. Wasn't it fun being with me? Is he a child? I was shocked and appalled by his unexpected words. You can't live a married life based on whether it's fun or not, right? I felt a strange calmness having moved beyond anger. I sighed heavily. Being with Philander was fun, but there were times when it felt like dealing with a child. I'm not your mother, you know. Grow up a little. Let's be together forever isn't a child's promise. We both have to work hard to live together. That's why I divorced you. Philander had nothing to say. Also, I would like you to pay back some of the living expenses you didn't contribute. As I said this, exasperated mother-in-law looked at Philander. You were supposed to put in living expenses, but you said you spent it on fun lately and didn't put it in. Roughly calculated, it's a total of $200,000. A grown man who works and can't even put in that much is pathetic, isn't it? Suddenly, mother-in-law became hysterical.
Philander, you're a good-for-nothing who can't even pay living expenses, just like your father.
I remembered Philander telling me that his father earned little and his mother had always worked. Is it genetic? Is it really genetic?
Pay that money back promptly. Come back home for now.
Suddenly, mother-in-law switched from Philander's side to mine. Well, that's how it is, so don't contact me anymore. There was nothing left to say. I looked around the room, almost empty of belongings, and sighed again. Goodbye. It was completely over for me. As I left the room without looking back, I heard Philander's voice from behind.
Sorry. Thank you for everything.
I felt refreshed as I left the familiar condominium. I failed in marriage, but now I can move forward. Later, Philander transferred the $200,000 he hadn't put in for living expenses. Apparently, mother-in-law is passionate about re-educating him, and he has changed jobs to a company near his parents' home, living under mother-in-law's financial management. I feel so relieved.